You're listening to KPFT Houston. It's time for Songwriter Studio. I'm your host, Tom Tranchilla. Catch KPFT's Songwriter Studio at 90.1 on the dial. If you're down in Galveston, you're picking us up at 89.5, and our friends up in the piney woods of East Texas, 91.9. Again, this is Songwriter Studio. I am your host, Tom Tranchilla, and it is my pleasure, after we introduce the engineer behind the glass, this week and every week, Lloyd Daniel, doing a fine job, giving us a place, giving us a space, so we could continue this show. Now in our 15th year, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for your support. It's our pleasure to bring our guest on the show tonight, Mr. Paul English. How you doing, Paul?
Doing good, Tom. Thanks for having me on your show. That's a pretty good picker there at the beginning of the show. It's a pretty good picker.
That would be me and Buddy.
Sounds pretty good, man. Nice to hear you play as well as talk.
Composer, pianist, producer, educator, all-around go-to guy in the studio. Paul, you've done it all. You do it all. And we're going to just sort of pick through some of the things you have under your belt and listen to as much music as we can cram into this 58 minutes. Again, thank you so much for spending your time with us on the show.
My pleasure.
I can't tell you how many CDs, new releases, local artists, regional artists. We've promoted their CDs on the show, and you are the piano player, the keyboard player, the organ player, the go-to guy. And, of course, John in Houston always raves about you. He just really promotes you hot and heavy, so...
Well, it's a joy to be able to play with so many different people in different genres. I mean, I probably get more joy out of that than anything, is being able to play a variety of music and with some really great people. So I consider myself lucky, man.
You know, I was reading your bio that you sent us. You've been on 350 recordings. Jazz, country, pop, blues, rock,
and that
new
bio
age.
hasn't been updated for a while, so, you know.
It may be more than that.
Honestly, I don't even know. I truthfully do not know.
And you more than likely
lose
have
track after a while.
Worked with just about every studio and engineer in town over the decades. I wanted to talk a little bit about, as an educator, some of the colleges and junior colleges, etc., that you've taught at. But before we do that, I want to jump into the first track we've got selected, Joy Spring. This is a very upbeat jazz tune. And why don't you pronounce David's last name for me on saxophone?
Funny you should say that. We when we first started working together, we had to decide whether it was going to be Casares or Caceres. He's got an uncle and a grandfather in the business, and so he pronounced it like they did, Caceres.
Caceres is
David
it
Caceres.
is.
Yeah.
He does some smoking hot saxophone, and
terrific musician.
Your keyboard work on here is just excellent. Would you like to introduce Joy Spring to the listening audience before we spin it?
Joy Spring by the great jazz trumpeter Clifford Brown, featuring, as you heard, David Caceres on alto sax, Brennan Nace on bass, and Tim Solik on drums. Recorded at Wire Road Studios here in Houston.
Oh, yeah.
Andy
I'm
Bradley,
familiar with
engineer.
the folks at Wire Roads for sure.
Yeah.
Let's listen to that track right now. I believe Lloyd's got you queued up and ready to go.
Okay.
This is Paul English, Joy Spring. English, Joy Spring. If I didn't know better, I'd swear we were listening to Spyro Gyra and Jay Beckenstein on saxophone there. But no, it was David Caceres.
You got it. That's it.
Okay, we sort of pronounced it correctly. Excellent. A great upbeat tune. This is a great song for you to start any set out with.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I want to talk about the next track. I had mentioned earlier about your extensive educating, but before we do that, I want to get this song out of the way because it's kind of long, and it's one of my favorites that you sent us. And correct me if I'm wrong, are you playing a Hammond B3 on As It Is?
Oh, yes. And one of my favorite instruments.
It's got that distinctive tone.
Nothing like a real B3, I tell you.
Going through a Leslie, going round.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's listen to this track right now, and tell the folks a little bit about some of the folks playing on here.
Brennan Nace has played guitar and bass with me over the years, fine musician here in Houston, and Joel Fulgham on drums. Joel's a North Texas grad, been around, great musician, had a lengthy career here in Houston and elsewhere traveling. It's one of those days that we finished a session and the studio was empty, and so I made a deal for an hour of studio time. We were already set up to record. It was impromptu, otherwise this might never have been recorded. We just said, well, we'll take an hour of studio time. Let's get a couple recorded. And we did. This was at Sugar Hill Studios back in the old days, I think back in the 90s.
When you could get away
Andy
with
Bradley
that.
Engineering.
You know, CTI used to do that. They would let musicians in the middle of the night and they'd jam.
That's it, man. Yeah, sometimes the most fun happens when you didn't plan it. It just happens, you know.
Looking forward to this track. If you're just tuning in, Paul English is our guest tonight on Songwriter Studio, and we are about to listen to As It Is. Paul English Trio, the unmistakable sound of Paul on that Hammond B3. I swear, little Brian Auger influence there, possibly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Brian Auger, Jimmy Smith, of course.
Jimmy Smith.
Yeah, a lot of guys. Man, that's just a great instrument. Fun to be able to play it.
And, I don't know how the guys in the rock and roll day lugged those Hammond B3s around from gig to gig. So, they had to have been the heaviest.
I don't know how I did it. I did it as a very young man, and I didn't even have a dolly for it. I don't even know how we did it, but we did it, one-nighters with a B3 and two 122 Leslies. Crazy.
Paul, you've been on the faculties at Texas Tech, Lloyd's alma mater. He was bragging about that earlier. Sam Houston University, San Jack, HCC,
Yep.
Rice University. You've been all over the place. And tell us what you liked about the education part of your job.
Well, if I can be completely honest on your show, which I think I can, I really love to teach. I never thought I would be a teacher. My dad was a teacher, and I swore I would never teach. And the older I got, the more I really, really get something out of it when I see a young student or even an older student just light up, and I'm able to impart something to them. So teaching has become a real passion of mine, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to teach at some great institutions. I'm not much for administration's paperwork, as many musicians and jazz musicians could probably agree. But I really, really like the teaching part, and I really had a great stay at each one of those schools. Texas Tech was great, and Sam Houston Community College, San Jack. Rice is actually, you finished a couple of degrees at Rice. I was teaching there while I was in school. And each one was a different experience, and each one I learned a lot. I think teaching is the greatest teacher. You learn so much from teaching. So it's really a big part of my life.
If you're just tuning in, Paul English is our guest on Songwriter Studio. And the next track I've got picked out here is a real smoker here. Hot piano work. I love the little drum solo at the end. Blow and Go. Tell the listening audience a little bit about this track.
Well, ironically, it was from the same session as the one you heard just before. Like I say, we bought some unused studio time. We had just finished a session that I played both piano and B3 on, and Joel Fulgham and Brendan Nace had been playing drums and bass, respectively, on that session. I don't remember the artist, but we were playing for somebody else. And we had a chance to book the studio for an hour, so everything was set up. We went in, I played B3 on the previous cut, and on this cut, I just moved over to the piano. And we said, guys, we never get to play like this. Let's have some fun. And that's probably the greatest time when you're a musician, is you're not worried about the club owner, the club manager, or the buying public. You just go in and have some fun. And this day was a blast, I got to tell you.
Well, Paul, I just found this track not only to be excellent, but it's just smoking hot. Let's listen to this track right now. This is the Paul English Trio, Blow and Go. Paul English Trio, Blow and Go, and you were blowing and going in that song.
Fun day, fun day.
Like that little hi-hat at the end. That was cool.
Yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of fun. You know, you can't play like that with just any musician. That may not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's a lot of fun to do that every now and then with guys who can do that. Great musicians I'm playing with there.
Just to stick with you, you were playing lightning fast up and down the keys on bass and drums. To keep it all together is a challenge, and that takes a lot of time playing together, as I know, to get that tight.
Oh, yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, Paul English is our guest on Songwriter Studio, voted the best jazz artist, best keyboardist, best jazz musician by Houston Press, Public News, Houston Chronicle, etc., etc. It's been our pleasure so far, and we've got plenty to go. Let's talk a little bit about Finnegan's Wake. This is a pretty much rockin' straightaway rock and roll song. And the guitar work. Who do you have playing guitar on here that reminds me so much of Jeff Beck?
Oh, you just said it. Kenny Cordray.
That's right.
Kenny is an absolute national treasure. We lost him a few years ago, but he has made his impression. He is one of the, well, if I can quote Jaco Pastorius, who some people may know, when Kenny was playing with Jaco in C.C. Ryder with Wayne Cochran, Jaco called Kenny Cordray the best blues guitarist he ever worked with. So that's high praise coming from one of the gods of the electric bass. Kenny was just a marvelous musician. So happy I got a chance to play with him. And he chose to do this song that I wrote on his record, It Takes Everything. I had recorded it in 1985 with Dwight Sills on guitar. And we had a really good version. And he came to me and said, I'd really like to record it. I said, okay. And we did, and had an absolute blast doing this.
I'll tell you what, this is one great cut. And like I said, his guitar work, of course, Kenny's been on many of the new releases we've featured on Songwriter Studio.
Yeah.
And he's just a smoking hot guitar player. He will be missed. Let's listen to that track right now. Finnegan's Wake, this is Paul English. Finnegan's Wake, Paul English composition featuring Kenny Cordray on outstanding guitar work.
Yeah, no kidding.
Paul, that should have been a hit on the radio, hands down.
I tell you, Kenny always came to play. I never was around him when he had a bad day. Or maybe he had a bad day, but I sure couldn't tell it with his playing. Amazing guy. Amazing guy.
You can be found around town. Tell the listening audience where you're playing these days. I know it's pretty tight with the COVID, but do you have any shows going on right now?
Well, with COVID going on, it's the pickings are slim for live audiences. I mean, we're being cautious among musicians, but a lot of the venues are too. The next thing I have for a public performance is going to be February 19th at Alta Arts. My jazz quartet will be there, and we're going to feature Kathy Lyon, who I see, by the way, is one of the people that have been on your show with Rich Chornay. She sang on one of his records. I just found that out through you.
Yes.
She's from Florida, but she's going to come and make her Houston debut with me at Alta Arts on February 19th.
Yeah, so be sure to give a shout out. We will try to promote that the week before. Let us know.
Thank you.
That's a show I wouldn't mind going to, providing this Omicron settles down just a little bit.
We're gonna hose the place down with disinfectant. You know what I mean? So it'll be safe, I hope. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I hope nothing interferes with it.
Let's talk a little bit about "Spare the Truth." You brought in Tommy Lee Bradley for this particular track.
Oh, well, it's her record, man. I mean, people that aren't in this business don't really realize or fully appreciate the relationships that are formed among musicians, both on stage and in the studio. But there's so much that goes on to building a relationship, a musical relationship. And this woman she just burst into my heart, man. She's like my soul sister that I never knew. And I must have known her in a past life, but when we first met, we just bonded, and I've gotten to play with her so many times. This is her record, Soul Soup, that she came out with in 2004 that I got to play on. And you chose one of my favorite cuts. Got a nice horn section, and Kelly Dean plays a nice tenor sax solo, and Robbie Parrish played drums and produced it at Sugar Hill Studios back in 2004 or something like that. But this is Spare the Truth.
Tommy Lee,
2004.
She's been a guest on my show, and it's been years. Tommy, if you're listening, it's time to book another session with Songwriter Studio for sure.
Absolutely.
I love this track. It's got a great funk, great beat, great vocals. It's just tight as a whip. Let's listen to that track right now. You are listening to Paul English, music off of Tommy Lee Bradley's Soul Soup album. The name of this track, Spare the Truth.
Spare the truth, spare the love. 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 You kept your little secrets, innocent white lies. Honesty is supposed to set you free, so why'd you keep it locked up inside? Spare the truth, then you spare the love. Spare the truth, spare the love. Spare the truth, spare the love. Spare the truth, spare the love. You wrap yourself in mystery, my son of a gun. You weren't honest with your history, with lots of things you overlooked. Then you spare the truth, then you spare the love. Then you spare the truth, and you spare the love. Yes, you do, and you spare the truth. Then you spare the love. when you spread the truth. Spoil the love. Yeah, you got caught so red-handed. Boy, I bet it really burned. You stole my trust, you're just abandoned. So maybe one day you'll learn. Spread the truth, then you spoil the love. When you spread the truth, you spoil the love. I guess you do when you spread the truth. Then you spoil the love. When you spread the truth, spoil the love. Spoil the love, spare the truth, spoil the love, spare the truth, spoil the love, spare the truth, spoil the love. I wish my eyesight had more insight, then I could read between the lines. I believed in all your stories, I guess that I was just living blind. Spare the truth, then you spoil the love. When you spare the truth, you spoil the love. Yes, you do, and spare the truth, then you spoil the love. When you spare the truth, spoil the love. If you spoil it and you spare the truth, then you spoil the love. When you spare the truth, you spoil the love. Yes, you do, spare the truth, spoil the love. Spare the truth.
Tommy Lee Bradley off of Soul Soup, Spare the Truth, featuring Paul English. Paul, who's playing the saxophone in this track?
That's Kelly Dean, another Houston treasure. Great player.
Smoking.
Tenor sax.
Smoking hot. You played years ago with Kirk Whalum. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, it was back in 78, 79. Kirk was a student over at TSU, and he was playing with Bubba Thomas's group, and a young man, and I heard him play, and I landed a 6-night-a-week gig at a club called Cody's, and I actually, before that, but I went to Kirk, and I said, hey, man, how'd you like to play with my group? And he said, I've already got a job. I said, well, are you working this week? He says, no. And I said, well, come play with me. Anyway, he came, and we had a nice collaborative relationship there for a few years. He played with my group, actually, for 2 years, my trio, and then my what I call the Paul English group, which was a quartet. Then he went off and started his own group, which he was quite capable of doing. Anyway, we had a great run. We had a quintet with Kurt playing saxophone, Johnny Torres playing saxophone and keyboards. I was playing trumpet, flugelhorn, and keyboards. Dave Hunt on drums, and Evan Arredondo on bass at Cody's, and just had a great time playing.
I used to frequent Cody's. It was a great venue.
It was a great venue, and launched a lot of careers, actually. Kirk went on to make bigger and better things, and several of the other musicians that played there with me and with others went on to have a great careers elsewhere. And of course, Kirk has become one of the biggest names in contemporary music, contemporary jazz and stuff.
Yes, he has.
And gospel music. And we're still friends. A great musician and a great human being.
Next track we've got picked out. It's a little short one, a minute or less. Canon in D minor. Tell us a little bit about why you recorded this. I just love your version of this.
Well, I thank you, man. That, believe it or not, this is something that I wrote. It's written in the style of Bach, and I wrote it as an assignment when I went back to school at Rice University, and I was studying not jazz but classical composition, and this was an assignment. And I took it, and I did a MIDI production of it. I played it later with real musicians, but this is actually a MIDI production that I did at Rivendell Studios in 1990 with state-of-the-art, at that time, sounds. And I did it later actually with voices. Anyway, it's a fun little piece, and this is my homage to Johann Sebastian Bach.
Yeah, and I was not aware that this was an original composition because it sounds so traditional classic.
Well, you know, got to wear a disguise every now and then, you know.
I'll tell you what, you're all over the map. We mentioned it early in the show, and this proves it. This is a great classical tune. Canon in D minor, This is Paul English. Canon in D minor, Paul English. Makes me want to sit down and listen to 30 more minutes of that.
Yeah, no kidding. Doesn't that type of counterpoint and harmony just never gets old in my book. Just a beautiful time in music, and to be able to imitate that is it's a challenge, but it's also rewarding. Just to, like you say, just listen. So.
You are listening to Songwriter Studio, and if you like what we do in here week after week, month after month, year after year, please don't forget KPFT. Go to that kpft.org website. Click on that tip jar and throw some money our way. Like all public radio, we're struggling to stay on the air, and we really need your help. It doesn't take much, just a small donation to keep us on the air. Songwriter Studio has been bringing the independent artists to you into our 15th year, and we'd like to be around a little while longer, so please don't forget us. If you're sticking around and in the Houston area or Galveston area, we've got some shows coming up. Carl Solomon will be performing at the Johnson House Concert Series in Galveston on February 12th. Contact James and Pam down there in Galveston if you want to go to that show. Next month after that, our good friend Daniel Bowling will be performing March 11th, 2022. So check with them, find out what the situation is with the COVID, and make sure the live performances are still being performed. If you're just tuning in, our guest tonight has been Mr. Paul English. Paul, I'd like you to tell the listening audience where they can go to find your music. Do you have a website or a place they can go to purchase your music?
Yeah, my website's a good stop, and it's easy to remember. It's just paulenglishmusic.com. I've got lots of links there and music to get. And, of course, you can get it at Amazon and iTunes. Should find it some on Spotify, most of the regular places. But when in doubt, just go to my website. There's other stuff there you might be interested in, including upcoming performances and things like that. paulenglishmusic.com.
And be sure to give us a shout-out before that gig next month. And
yes, sir.
We will remind the listening audience. We've got the next track queued up, Beauty. This is a 1995 recording. And tell the listening audience a little bit about this track.
Well, this is a song I wrote when I was just barely 19 years old, just after my 19th birthday. And it's kind of been near and dear to me for a long time. And the first recording of it was 1995, which is a good 25 years after it was written. This particular version features Eric Avenger on guitar. And then toward the end, we add orchestration with Arlie DeRoe on flute, Colin Gatwin on oboe, Richard Manamaker on bass clarinet, James Metcalf and Ray Dillard on percussion, Max Dyer on cello, kind of the kitchen sink there. But it's all pretty gentle. One of my favorite ballads that I've written, and this is entitled Beauty.
Let's listen to that track right now. This is Paul English. Paul English. Paul, you named that right, Beauty. What a beautiful song.
Oh, thank you so much. I failed to mention the soloist on that. It was the great Kirk Whalum on soprano saxophone.
Oh,
And
we were just
I
talking about Kirk.
wrote this before I met Kirk, but it could very easily have been written and titled after the beautiful sound he gets out of a soprano saxophone. Not too many players in the world can match that.
No, it was wonderful. Paul, we've pretty much covered the gamut tonight, from rock and roll to funk to classical to jazz, even fusion. We've tried to cover as much as possible. I think we did a pretty good job of letting the listening audience know that you play everything.
Well, man, you got to make a living.
Yes.
No, the truth is it's a great joy to be able to play with so many different musicians, different genres, different styles, and different studios and different places for different people, man. That's what music's all about, right? Just
Absolutely.
getting it out there for everybody.
It's been our pleasure to interview tonight on
Thank you,
Songwriter
Tom.
Studio.
Thanks
And,
for having me on the show. Thank you very much.
Please stick around. Up next, we have Irish Airs, followed by our friends of the Bluegrass Depot. And don't forget kpft.org. If you like what you hear and you believe in supporting what you hear, hit that tip jar for us. Thank you so much, Paul English.
Thank you, Tom.
Lloyd Daniel behind the glass, and we will see you next week. And I think we're going to go out with one of your songs as we leave, Beautiful Love. Tell us a little bit about this track.
This is a quartet recording that I made with the great David Liebman, one of the giants of saxophone, jazz saxophone these days. It was recorded in 2000, but just released last year on my CD, Girl in Green. This is David Liebman with my quartet playing old standard, Beautiful Love.
The Paul English Quartet, the name of this track, Beautiful Love. Thanks again. Join us next week.